Alright, so this is going to be a little weird to talk about. I haven't talked about Destiny in quite some time, but here we are. Edge of Fate is here, and honestly, I haven't really put a large amount of time into this game since the final shape. I dabbled in Echoes a little bit. I enjoyed the story for what it was. The Maya Sundaresh stuff and the Chioma SC storyline was pretty good. And I did jump back into Heresy just before Edge of Fate's release to see if I even wanted to give Bungie a chance to kind of bring me back in Edge of Fate. And honestly, Heresy was pretty darn good for a season. I really enjoyed that one. However, this is the next expansion, and with being an expansion come certain expectations. With Bungie now moving to two medium sized expansions with some DLC in between, it's kind of a chance to see what the future holds with them and how they're going to be handling it. So let's get into the Edge of Fate itself. This is going to be a very contentious title to talk about with a lot of people. You're going to love it or you're going to absolutely hate it. I have seen a lot of opinions over the last few hours, and they range from this is amazing, or this is really mid, to this is awful and is compared to Lightfall. I do not agree with the comparisons to Lightfall, as I think that was really fumbled and only really saved by the activities and weapons that it brought with it. For me, it lands somewhere between mid and great. I don't think it's middling and just kind of existing, but I don't think it reaches the heights that it was really reaching for either. My review is mostly going to focus on the campaign and some of the changes to Destiny as a whole. So let's go into the changes to Destiny itself. When you start, you're going to notice that all your characters don't have any power levels, and the power grind has seemingly started from nearly zero, starting at level 10. This is Bungie kind of resetting and trying to bring some urgency of some sort to the power grind. I do think it does work in a lot of ways, but the ultimate say on whether this is good or bad really matters when you put a lot more time into this than just the campaign, so I won't go into that too much. However, what you can notice immediately are the gear changes. Both weapons and armor have been kind of revamped in the way you get them. Weapons will come in multiple tiers, and armor comes in specific classes in a way. And on the armor tier part, your stats have been really reworked in this area to be a little more easy to understand for newer players, focusing on specific things like super, grenade, melee, weapons, and things like that. With weapons kind of being the stat you really want to have some points in because it's your overall damage with your weapons. I like this system as it plays out in the game, although I do feel like there needed to be more loot diversity throughout this campaign, but it's ultimately going to be kind of a toss-up whether this works well in the long run with funneling people into certain playstyles with this armor, rather than just kind of letting people farm for armor with whatever stats they want in whatever columns, and that kind of comes with its own freedom and its own issues. The weapon side of things is awesome though. I think this is probably my favorite change to the gear system, as tier 1 weapons will have the regular amount of perks and things. Tier 2 has some enhanced versions, tier 3 has a few extra options, and tier 4 is pretty much a shiny version with even more options and enhanced perks. This is pretty cool. I didn't get any like tier 4s in my playthrough, but I got up to tier 3 and those weapons do perform a lot better. It's kind of toss up if it's gonna completely negate the need for our old weapons, but I do like this system as it is, even though it kind of needs some adjusting here and there. But with this campaign brought a few new mechanics: the matter ball, the relocator, and this dark matter pickup. And these three mechanics do shake up the campaign experience a lot, but not necessarily always in good ways. And this kind of depends on what kind of player you are. If you are okay with kind of slowing it down and figuring out a puzzle here and there, you will probably like these, as they do shake up a lot and do challenge the brain in ways that most Destiny content doesn't, when it just kind of devolves into some brainless shooting on some things. However, if you are here for that brainless shooting and just to get through this campaign to see what stuff there is, these will actively annoy you and probably will break the whole thing for you. When it comes to the relocator, it's basically a teleporter with extra steps. There's no getting around it, and it is used prominently, but not a ton. I did have some complaints with some puzzles if they took me about 10 minutes. I spent about, 5 minutes trying to figure out where even the cannon was in the first place, which kind of felt like a pointless thing to kind of hide in the way. You already have a puzzle. Why are you hiding this cannon from me? Why am I having to look for it and basically halt everything? The dark matter ability is among the one I like the most. I think this one is really cool. It lets you kind of change the environment in certain ways with certain platforms as you go and collect these dark matter spores, throw them at a piece, and it'll come and unfold most likely platforms or unveil a kind of secret or open up a path that you couldn't go through before. However, the most contentious one of all three of these is the Matter Ball, and you'll either love or hate this, but for me, I kind of love it, even though I do think there is some missed opportunity with it. It really reminds me of Metroid and going through a lot of small areas, opening doors, and fighting enemies with it in the same way that Metroid uses Samus's ball form. However, it does devolve into kind of a by the numbers thing that you are doing strictly to just get a shield down or open a door. That part is not lost on me. However, I do appreciate this being in the middle of some boss fights instead of just, hey, look, a boss's damage gate is up. You have to stop and do something where usually we just shoot something that takes 2 seconds and then continue. We actually have a small puzzle of sorts to figure out with the Matter Ball in order to do it. I think this personally is a step forward, not a step back, as having a damage gate in the first place come down with something that only takes a couple of seconds kind of makes it feel a little pointless and annoying. So it's all going to matter on the type of player you are and whether you'll walk away loving or hating these mechanics. However, I do feel like there is one universal praise that is getting handed out, and that is for the actual story content and the actual campaign itself. This was fantastic. I absolutely loved this campaign experience. This story is so good, and partially in part due to just focusing on a few characters, fleshing those characters out, and making the world even more interesting than it has seemed in quite some time. Especially if you are a longtime Destiny player and have kind of become jaded with all of the existential threats and all of the scientific and crazy fantasy jargon that has been tossed around a lot. A lot of this comes in the form of Lodi. This character kind of recontextualizes a lot of what we already know, while delving into things in the past that really change our perspective on the now in this universe. He's used to great extent, and to me was definitely the highlight of this whole expansion. This campaign basically revolves around this dude, and he's more important than I could have ever expected him to be. The story here also expands on things we know or don't know about characters that we've known for a long time, such as Ikora Rey, and even the Emissary of the Nine, who is one of the first characters we're introduced to, or I should say reintroduced to, right at the start of the DLC. And I will say this DLC pretty much revolves around the Nine and their mystery and why they would want us on Kepler investigating this place in the first place. I'm trying not to go into too many spoilers, but it does go some places, and there's a lot of payoff for things that I actually wasn't expecting them to touch on at all. Things that have existed in the game for quite some time. And it all culminates in a pretty darn good finale. Even with all of my gripes with mechanics and things like that, the last couple missions of this were fantastic. I really enjoyed them, and had they kind of kept that kind of energy the whole campaign length, I feel like it would have done a lot better. It was a little heavy-handed on some of the puzzles. They kind of did feel like they got in the way here and there, but overall, I did love this story. I think the story itself is a 9 out of 10. After completing the campaign, I see pretty much two polarizing opinions that this is either the great DLC that Bungie needs, not like peak of greatness, but a good one, or it's like the worst thing ever to them. The gameplay part of this DLC is where it's going to be make or break for a lot of people, and will probably affect whether they stick around or not for the large amount of things there are to do afterwards. I've just finished the campaign and I can really see a lot of things that I could be doing, a lot of side missions and quests and things, a lot of exotic missions, a lot of secrets around the planet, and other activities that for some reason are time gated. Come on, Bungie, time gates are not the way to get people to get back and playing. Get that out of here. We don't want that. Anyway, overall, I think this expansion is pretty good. I don't think it's in like the top 3 expansions of Destiny's history, because that's a world where the Taken King, Witch Queen, the Final Shape, and Forsaken all exist. But I do think this one is a pretty good expansion. Now, here comes my big issue with this. I don't think this will actually work in the long run. And I do think it may cause problems for Bungie, as I don't think this really felt like a true expansion. It felt like a slightly larger season, right? Or something more around Warmind size of expansion. It was definitely not like the size and scope of something we wanted for a true expansion. Whether that works for Bungie in the long run remains to be seen, and whether the content on offer here keeps players engaged also remains to be seen. So maybe I will return and make another video on how this game is doing in a few weeks' time to see how this landed with people overall. But for now, the campaign experience I think is pretty good, and I think it's actually worth playing. Don't go ahead and just be like, alright, Destiny is back, it's great again. It ain't that. However, I do think this is worth playing. So, that's all my thoughts on this for now. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. If you really enjoyed it, go ahead and give me a like. It really helps and I appreciate it. If you didn't like it or have some constructive feedback, go ahead and comment down below, or even just comment and let me know how you are landing with this expansion and what you thought of it upon finishing it. As always, I'm Havoc Fanatic. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.